Unplugged In.
3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback.
U.S. President Donald Trump delivers his State of the Union address as his impeachment trial wraps up. But even as Senate Republicans shield the president from removal, new questions on the impact of the impeachment trial on the 2020 election. And later, caucus confusion in Iowa. A system crash delays primary polling results, leaving Democratic presidential hopefuls wondering who won and who lost. What does it all mean in the race to the White House? Find out on this episode of Plugged In and the state of American politics. Hello, welcome to Plugged In. I'm Greta Van Susteren. A very busy week in American politics, including chaos and confusion in the state of Iowa after a new voting app left Democratic presidential hopefuls and caucus goers wondering who won and who lost. But that's not all. On Capitol Hill, senators voting on articles of impeachment, whether to oust President Trump or not. We begin with the president's Tuesday night State of the Union address before a joint session of Congress. Democratic Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who initiated impeachment proceedings against the president, standing directly behind President Trump as he addressed Congress. Here is some of what the president had to say.
In just 3 short years, we have shattered the mentality of American decline, and we have rejected the downsizing of Americans' destiny. We have totally rejected the downsizing. We're moving forward at a pace that was unimaginable just a short time ago, and we are never, ever going back. I am thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. Our borders are secure. Our families are flourishing. Our values are renewed. Our pride is restored. And for all of these reasons, I say to the people of our great country and to the members of Congress, the state of our union is stronger than ever before. I also promised our citizens that I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs. Our strategy has worked. Days ago, we signed the groundbreaking new agreement with China that will defend our workers, protect our intellectual property, bring billions and billions of dollars into our treasury, and open vast new markets for products made and grown right here in the USA. For decades, China has taken advantage of the United States. Now we have changed that. But at the same time, we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi. They respect what we've done because, quite frankly, they could never really believe that they were able to get away with what they were doing year after year, decade after decade, without someone in our country stepping up and saying, "That's enough." Now we want to rebuild our country, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are rebuilding our country. As we restore American leadership throughout the world, we are once again standing up for freedom in our hemisphere. That's why my administration reversed the failing policies of the previous administration on Cuba. We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Over 130 legislators in this chamber have endorsed legislation that would bankrupt our nation by providing free taxpayer-funded health care to millions of illegal aliens, forcing taxpayers to subsidize free care for anyone in the world who unlawfully crosses our borders. These proposals would raid the Medicare benefits of our seniors and that our seniors depend on, while acting as a powerful lure for illegal immigration. That is what is happening in California and other states. Their systems are totally out of control, costing taxpayers vast and unaffordable amounts of money. If forcing American taxpayers to provide unlimited free health care to illegal aliens sounds fair to you, then stand with the radical left. But if you believe that we should defend American patients and American seniors, then stand with me and pass legislation to prohibit free government health care for illegal aliens. This will be a tremendous boon to our already very strongly guarded southern border, where, as we speak, a long, tall, and very powerful wall is being built. We have now completed over 100 miles and have over 500 miles fully completed in a very short period of time. Early next year, we will have substantially more than 500 miles completed. My administration is also strongly defending our national security and combating radical Islamic terrorism. Last week, I announced a groundbreaking plan for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Recognizing that all past attempts have failed, we must be determined and creative in order to stabilize the region and give millions of young people the chance to realize a better future. 3 years ago, the barbarians of ISIS held over 20,000 square miles of territory in Iraq and Syria. Today, the ISIS territorial caliphate has been 100% destroyed, and the founder and leader of ISIS, the bloodthirsty killer known as al-Baghdadi, is dead. In recent months, we have seen proud Iranians raise their voices against their oppressive rulers. The Iranian regime must abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stop spreading terror, death, and destruction, and start working for the good of its own people. Because of our powerful sanctions, the Iranian economy is doing very, very poorly. We can help them make a very good and short-time recovery. It can all go very quickly, but perhaps they are too proud or too foolish to ask for that help. We are here. Let's see which road they choose. It is totally up to them. As we defend American lives, we are working to end America's wars in the Middle East.
And keeping with tradition, the opposing political party responded to the president's address. Here is part of that rebuttal by the state of Michigan's Democratic Governor, Gretchen Whitmer.
It's pretty simple. Democrats are trying to make your health care better. Republicans in Washington are trying to take it away. It doesn't matter what the president says about the stock market. What matters is that millions of people struggle to get by or don't have enough money at the end of the month after paying for transportation, student loans, or prescription drugs. American workers are hurting. In my own state, our neighbors in Wisconsin and Ohio, Pennsylvania, and all over the country, wages have stagnated while CEO pay has skyrocketed.
President Trump spoke for 1 hour and 22 minutes, interrupted by applause from his Republican Party. And he spoke about his accomplishments and about his vision for the future. He did not mention his impeachment trial. Joining us to talk about all this is VOA senior White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara. Nice to see you, Patsy.
Happy to be here.
Okay, Patsy, he touched on foreign policy and he said, among other things, he rejected the downsizing of the United States. What was he saying?
So he's essentially giving the American people his vision of America, right? Putting in line with everything that he has done before, everything that he has said before in his campaign up to now, which is putting America first. So we see that very much into each paragraph of his speech almost, right? I mean, even when he's bringing up foreign policy, he's essentially talking about domestic policy. Case in point was when he introduced Juan Guaido, whom he acknowledged as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. right after he introduced Juan Guaido, what he did was attack the Democrats on healthcare and on socialism. So these are some of the ways that he's using foreign policy to establish his dominance in domestic policy, including, for example, in the trade deals. He mentioned trade deals with China, he mentioned trade deals with Canada and Mexico, and again, bringing up this notion that under the Trump administration, American economy is the strongest it's ever been.
All right, so he has a huge focus, and he's a former businessman, huge focus on the economy. And in fact, it's a familiar theme. He always talks about people not paying fair share in NATO, and that he thinks the United States, as he says, are getting ripped off by some of these other countries in prior trade deals. But he also talked about the killing of General Soleimani, in Iran, the Iranian general. What did he say about that?
So he's essentially saying that he's taken out, the terrorists, not just Soleimani, but also Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And so he's again projecting this image of strength, military strength abroad, and also mentioned that he had just recently released his Middle East peace plan between Israel and Palestine. Now, obviously, the data here is mixed because even though he released his Middle East peace plan, there is no involvement from the Palestinians. So all these foreign policy accomplishments come with notes that Democrats are sure to point out that this is not entirely true. Democrats are fact-checking it. One thing that I do want to discuss with you, Greta, today is just the overall mood of the show, of the Speech of the Union. Speech of the Union is always political theater, and boy, what a show that we had last night.
Well, this State of the Union, like other ones, and former presidents of the opposing party, that does sort of speak to, they're sort of aspirational things that, they all the presidents talk about what they have done in the past 2 years, 1 year,
Sure.
4 years, whatever, but they also talk about what they want to do in the future. So you use the word political theater. It is indeed that, but it's also meant to inspire.
Right, and I think in terms of last night's speech, it was a very forward-looking speech. It was a very positive speech, and this, I think, is the way that Trump is taking playbook of Bill Clinton in 1999 when he was under the threat of impeachment, but also did not mention the word impeachment. Trump did not mention the word impeachment. He barely alluded to it, and we almost didn't believe Hogan Gidley, his deputy press secretary, yesterday morning when he said that the president wasn't going to mention the word impeachment. We thought that, given the tendency of the president to go off script, he may allude it in some way, but he didn't. So in that way, he learned from Bill Clinton in 1999. He did not go the route of Richard Nixon in 1974 when he famously said that 1 year of Watergate is enough.
And what's different about this time, for instance, compared to like other times, is that haven't just started a war. It didn't have a lot of military in it, except for he said that he has bolstered the U.S. military and got it more strength.
Correct, and this is very much a speech that is geared towards his re-election. You can hear parts of his speech sounding a lot like a campaign rally. Now, of course, behind that rhetoric, we also see this big display of the dynamics in American politics right now, starting from, right off the bat in the beginning when Nancy Pelosi extended her hand and he refused to shake it until all the way to the end when she ripped up his speech. So indeed, it was political theater.
It was, and it's always fascinating to watch. And on prior years, they've even counted how many times presidents have been arrested by the applause line, and the applause typically comes almost all from his own party, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. But it's always fascinating to watch. Patsy, thank you.
My pleasure.
Patsy Widakuswara, VOA senior White House correspondent. And keeping it on Capitol Hill, we turn now to the latest on the impeachment of President Trump. History will remember Donald Trump as only the third U.S. president to be impeached, but will be the lasting impact of the impeachment process of the Trump administration. What will be the lasting effect on the American people? Well, the United States is just months away from its next presidential election. Will President Trump be reelected to a second term, or will a Democratic opponent win? VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson joins us from Capitol Hill. Nice to see you, Catherine.
Good to see you, too.
Always these State of the Union are a little bit different than the one that's leading up to the next presidential election. Did you feel the politics there?
Oh, certainly. I think that watching that whole interplay between Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, remember, Nancy Pelosi is the one person who can find a way to always get under Donald Trump's skin, and she was certainly doing that in the House chamber where President Trump had been impeached by the Democratic majority less than 2 months ago. She did go out, she did extend that handshake, but then President Trump didn't accept it. And by the end of the speech, we of course had that extraordinary moment where she was ripping up the speech right behind him. It really spoke to the atmosphere that's been up here on Capitol Hill the past few weeks, where everybody is pitted against each other, where there's no room for common ground, where quite frankly it's been exhausting to go through the Senate impeachment trial.
Well, I think it was pretty obvious she did tear up the speech. I mean, that I got, but I was unclear in watching last night when Nancy Pelosi, when President Trump came in, Nancy Pelosi is standing behind him as he's handed the copy of the speech to her and to Vice President Pence. I was not sure whether he dissed her and didn't accept her extended arm or whether he didn't see it, was looking at the Vice President, but clearly there's bad blood between the two.
Right. I mean, if you watch it, go back and watch it, you can see that that little moment happens very quickly because, of course, the president is handing a copy of his speech to the Vice President and to Nancy Pelosi, but then he was already kind of turning around to start his speech when she extended the hand. So I'd really be curious to know whether he actually saw it, if he knew what was going on in the moment. That may not have been the diss that everybody played it off to be.
Have you heard any Democrats say, well, the speech was pretty good, or have you heard any Republicans say the speech wasn't good?
That's a great question, because that's really how things happen up here on Capitol Hill. You come out, you talk to the Democrats after anything that President Trump does, and they will say, look, there was nothing here. That was a partisan political rally that we just heard. A couple of Democrats actually walked out in the middle of the speech during certain sections about undocumented immigrants, that type of thing. And then you go to the other side with the Republicans, who say that it was, quite frankly, one of the best State of the Union speeches they've ever seen, particularly because of those political theater moments that President Trump is so good at. We had some really standout moments where things that have never happened in the State of the Union before happened last night. That'll make it a memorable State of the Union speech.
And of course, that meanwhile, while this is going on in the State of the Union, where a president announces the state of the, how the United States is doing, is that you've got this impeachment trial going on where one party, it's pretty safe to say it's partisan, is seeking to throw the president out for two reasons, two articles of impeachment. So you've got that drama going on during the day.
Right, exactly. It was this incredible day up on Capitol Hill where you had U.S. senators taking to the Senate floor to talk through their decision to either acquit President Trump of those two charges of impeachment, articles of impeachment, or to remove him from office. And then you have them all going and flooding into the House chamber to listen to that president give a speech. First time it's ever happened here in the United States.
And to give the viewers a little taste of this, both sides delivered in that impeachment powerful closing statements. Impeachment manager Adam Schiff urging senators to vote with their conscience. The president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, calling the impeachment proceedings a farce. Here it is.
You and we represent the American people, the ones at home and at work who are hoping that their country will remain what it has always believed it to be, a beacon of hope, of democracy, and of inspiration to those striving around the world to create their own more perfect unions, for those who are standing up to lawlessness and to tyranny.
What the House Democrats have done to this nation, to the Constitution, to the office of the President, to the President himself, and to this body is outrageous. They have cheapened the awesome power of impeachment, and unfortunately, of course, the country is not better for that.
Catherine, when you listen to that, everybody watched the same trial, listened to the same speech last night, but when you talk to Republicans and Democrats, it's as though they saw a different trial and a different speech.
That's absolutely right, and I think that's one of the longer-term consequences of the Senate impeachment trial, is that it really speaks to how each side is really viewing American democracy and the checks and balances in the U.S. system of government really differently. There's a way of thinking about how our democratic institutions are working now that each side sees completely differently. Democrats said that they had to rush this impeachment trial because they had to address what they said was alleged election interference in the upcoming presidential election in November. They said it was imminent, that they had to address this to ensure a free and fair election. Well, Republicans are saying, look, the American people are going to go to the ballot box in 9, 10 months. They are the ones who should be making the decision here, not U.S. senators. Leave it up to the voters' hands and let them decide about our democratic institutions and whether President Trump was guilty of violating any of them.
Catherine, thank you. Catherine Gibson, our VOA congressional correspondent. And with the president successfully beating back Democratic efforts to oust him from office, the focus this week shifted to Iowa, where Democratic candidates were busy campaigning for their party's nomination. But a glitch in a new voting app appears to have thrown a monkey wrench into the vote counting process. More on that later. But first, a bit of history on the Iowa caucus. For nearly 50 years, Iowa has played an outsized role in American presidential politics. Why does a small state with a 92% white population, only a third the size of New York City, have so much political clout in a nationwide race? For starters, Iowa is first. Iowa has been the first state to hold presidential contests since 1972. Since 1976, Iowa has correctly chosen 7 Democratic presidential nominees, including the last 4, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John Kerry, and Al Gore. The state is also noteworthy because of the way it chooses a nominee. It's called a caucus. On caucus day, voters gather in each precinct where meetings are held in schools, churches, libraries, and even private homes. But instead of voting, supporters for each candidate divides themselves into groups, gathering in one corner of the room to show their support for a candidate. The candidate with the largest caucuses will go on to win the state's nomination, often getting a boost as they move on to primary contests in other states. A good performance in Iowa is not always the deciding factor in who ultimately wins a political party's nomination. But a poor showing in Iowa could have a huge impact on a candidate's momentum and in his ability to raise money. That's especially true when the results are clear, which clearly was not the case this week. Apparently, a coding error delayed results from Monday night's important race in Iowa for the Democratic Party's nomination for president. For a look at how this might impact the Democratic leadership race and ultimately the 2020 election, we are joined by VOA senior national correspondent Jim Malone. Jim, you just can't make this stuff up. We thought Monday night we'd have the results from one state as we march on to the other states, but we don't.
Yeah, and there's been a long time controversy. Should states do caucus voting or go to a primary? The trend has been going to primaries. There's only a handful of states that have the caucuses, but Iowa has really made their reputation on that since about 1972. So they're a singular kind of presence there that the candidates are used to going. It's interesting, on the Republican side, you just go to the caucus site that night, you vote, and you go home. The Democrats have this complicated lineup, who do you want, and sometimes try to convince their neighbors who to stick with.
But it's not like voting hasn't also, the voting has not been without problems here in this country, which is always perplexing to me. I can change planes in Doha and get $100 out of my ATM machine and immediately records it back here in D.C. But for some reason, voting has we're bedeviled by this.
Right, and they made clear that there's no hacking here by the Russians but there's already a high level of anxiety about that heading into this election cycle. So any kind of election kind of problems are going to highlight that issue. And of course, what's the fallout been? The candidates didn't get that much of a boost, those who did well, and we're looking at Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, and the candidate who did less well, perhaps, Joe Biden now, who's going to have to really have some sort of comeback in the next few weeks, I think, to remain relevant in this race.
And we should explain that Joe Biden is the former vice president of the United States. And so, a lot of people thought that he would have a commanding showing in Iowa.
He was the front runner for much of the year going into this election. He was ahead in the national polls. But there's questions about his age. And also what seemed to come out of Iowa was Democrats are looking for something or someone different. In some cases, it's a revolutionary look at how we, reform government in this country, led by Bernie Sanders, or a more moderate view by Pete Buttigieg. There's an age gap there of 40 years, by the way, between Buttigieg and Sanders.
What's sort of complicating all this is that you have the far left, like Senator Bernie Sanders, and then you have the more moderate Democrats all vying for the same job, the nomination for president. But some Democrats are taking a longer view, saying who can beat President Trump.
That's right. I mean, that was supposedly the guiding principle for all the people going to the caucus. But I think what we're seeing right now is a big divide in the Democratic Party. That progressive versus moderate strain looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better. That can only help President Trump. Look, he's had a remarkable week, okay? He's about to beat the impeachment rap. His polls are going up. He just did State of the Union. The political landscape is shifting a bit this week. Now, it doesn't mean it can't shift back, but the Democrats look like they may be in for a long, divisive battle with no clear kind of nominee at this point, and that's unusual in this system.
Well, the minute that this problem was developed on Monday night, we thought we were going to get the results. The backup system didn't work, which was you phone in the results to the central place in Iowa, and people were on hold for a long time. That didn't work. But the Republicans started tweeting things like, well, the Democrats had 4 years to get ready for this caucus, right, and they can't do it, and they want to run the entire country.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's painful what's happened to the Democrats with this.
It was a boon for their talking points. There's no doubt about it. So how do Democrats kind of, come back from this? Sanders is favored to do well in the New Hampshire primary next week. The question will be, who comes in second and third? How close do they get? And where do we go from there? As I say, we have a lot more contests to go, and this race is going to develop incrementally. Iowa usually winnows the field. You had 5 people come out of Iowa still viable. So that's unusual given historical precedent.
Iowa's been first for a long time, and there's been a lot of sort of the rest of the states said, what about us? Why can't we be first? And now with this problem and the fact that Iowa has 92% white
Right.
population, so
Right.
it doesn't reflect the rest of the country, but they get the first swing at this.
This is going to fuel the fires of Democrats who have long said, look, Iowa should not be going first, doesn't reflect the country more broadly, certainly doesn't reflect the demographics of the Democratic Party. So the whole caucus thing now, especially for Democrats, is going to be somewhat of a question mark. I noticed the Republicans in Iowa have come out to defend the system because they still like that Iowa first thing. But for Republicans, it's a much more simpler procedure.
What's interesting is that I was out in Iowa for this, is that the Democrats, whoever wins in Iowa, has gone on to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. In the Republican Party, though, in 2012, it was Senator Santorum who won
Right.
Iowa, but
Right.
then it was Romney
Right.
who got the nomination. And then in 2016, President Trump didn't win the Iowa on the Republican side. It was Ted Cruz.
Well, even among Democrats, 7 out of 10 times the person has gone on to be the nominee. I mean, Bill Clinton did not win.
He didn't win
Iowa.
either, or
Right.
New Hampshire.
But the other example there is Barack Obama, who used his victory in Iowa, in a state predominantly white, as a springboard to the White House. So you've had, though, 2 Democrats who've done well in Iowa eventually were elected president, Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama.
All right, one quick question. Mayor Bloomberg, who is not in the Iowa caucus, didn't participate, spent over $300 million in ads so well. He's fabulously wealthy. Does he benefit from this chaos in Iowa?
He does, and we're going to see more of him. And the more there's disarray and uncertainty of the Democratic race, that's an opening for Bloomberg. Doesn't necessarily mean he can win, but he's going to be a factor.
Some of the senators who are running for president, they were not there in Iowa in the last 2 weeks because they had to be back here in Washington for the Senate trial. Hurt them, you think?
It's possible, but then Joe Biden wasn't in Washington. He was on the campaign trail, and he did not benefit as much. Perhaps Pete Buttigieg benefited the most, offering sort of a new, different personality. Democrats often like that. They're looking for that new, younger person to come along, like Obama, like Clinton.
The Senator Elizabeth Warren was the front runner for so long, and she did reasonably well in Iowa. We don't have all the results yet, but now we go to New Hampshire. That's next door to Massachusetts, but it's also next door to Vermont, where Senator Bernie Sanders is from.
Right.
He's expected to do better than she is there.
She needs to do well in New Hampshire. I think second place is probably in her sights. If she can't do that, there'll be more questions about her. But again, if we move forward the next several weeks, no one has a clear advantage, so it's not going to be an incentive for many people to get out of the race. Why would you leave if there's no nominee apparent coming into the fore?
And what we didn't discuss, we don't have time to, but we will again, is the fact that they've changed the whole rules of the Democratic Party about some other voting, but we'll save that as a tease for next time. Jim, thank you.
You bet.
Jim Malone, our VOA senior national correspondent, and that is all the time we have for today. Stay plugged in by liking us on Facebook at Voice America, and you can also like my Facebook page at facebook.com/Greta, and do follow me on Twitter at Greta. Thank you for being plugged in.